So paying attention to the launch of Black Ops 7, it seems like a lot of people got a case of the COD fatigue. And for some people, they've already had it for a while, and some it just finally caught up to them for several different reasons. And I don't blame people for having COD fatigue. Even for myself personally, there were certain elements of this new launch where I did have a little bit of COD fatigue in certain areas, whether it was specifically related to Warzone, maybe it was the MP grind year over year with the stricter SBMM, or engagement optimized matchmaking, or one of the various things I'll talk about. So I don't blame people. I think it is one of those interesting things. We'll talk about some of the things that contribute to it. I don't really think COD can really do anything, because even with the current state of the game being as solid as it is, if you don't include the campaign of Black Ops 7 in the conversation, I think people are generally liking multiplayer and people are generally liking zombies. Not saying everyone, because it's definitely not everyone enjoying every facet of the game, but there are several issues that have led to this fatigue, and I'll go ahead and kind of go through them. And if you relate, maybe I missed some, but I think it's worth talking about, because I think it's been a problem that's building for years. We've talked about multiple times on the channel as MW 2019 being the leading cause of a lot of these issues. And as I talk through these topics, I think many people will probably agree that that really started that trend, because so much changed in that year that actually led to all these compounding effects that have led to strict COD fatigue. I've already mentioned one part of it, which is the stricter SBMM, engagement optimized matchmaking, whichever you want to refer it to. Felt like there was this overbearing restrictiveness algorithm behind the scenes trying to determine what your experience was going to be like in game. Became very predictable. You know that if you had good matches, it would only get sweatier. If you felt like you had bad matches for a repeated amount of time, you would probably get the occasional carrot on the stick to keep you playing, because it felt good to have an easier match. But even when you had those good matches, it felt like it was choreographed, predictable, that you were expecting to get that. And you don't really get that dopamine hit, because it felt like, and given a participation trophy essentially to stay on the game. And that was really a bad thing that was introduced in MW 2019. Even though prior to that, there was some level of SBMM, it wasn't particularly strict. I know AW is notorious or most notable for having a stricter SBMM. But besides that, I think most people felt like SBMM was way looser, less restrictive, and nothing like what we've had for the past 5 years. And even it felt like a little bit less than what we have currently, even though what we have currently within Black Ops 7 is a vast improvement over the past 5 years. And before we get too deep into it, we do have a sponsor announcement. So I'm excited to announce my new partnership with AIM Controllers. They offer fully customizable controllers, which includes 4 remappable back paddles, which don't require a third-party app to remap. Fully customizable faceplate, button covers, and basically everything on here. Also active triggers for haptic feedback or digital mouse click, with the simple switch on the back. And it solves one of the #1 problems for controllers with TMR sticks. You're not going to get that stick drift. And it even comes with a lifetime warranty for all the modded parts, even including the paint on the covers. And if you want to get one for yourself, they got a sale going on right now. Just click the link or use code JGOD at checkout. Really excited to be working with AIM Controllers. I think there's a little bit of content bloat and overload, which sounds kind of weird. It's like, you know, some of the games, it felt like we didn't really get enough content and they didn't maintain the game throughout the year. I think Black Ops 6 contributed to this massively because so many small maps at launch. That was really a big mark on the game, because it just felt like everything was hectic, fast paced, and over the top too much. And there wasn't really any of that COD feel where you can flank and all that stuff, even though they fixed a bunch of stuff in the game, in the systems. The content wasn't there. But in general, it's like there's too much content. When you go in, you got a level. There's camos, there's different modes, there's Warzone, and there's others, you know, all these other things. And it's every year. And it felt relentless, I think, for some people. And that goes hand in hand with like the Battle Pass fatigue. Fortnite popped off with their Battle Pass, and then every game every game under the sun has essentially copied that model. There's very few exceptions to that, but pretty much Fortnite popped off with that. And then in 2019, we got the seasonal Battle Pass, which initially doesn't feel all that bad because it kind of pays for itself. But it does feel like you're, you know, that hamster on the wheel, just kind of grinding relentlessly for cosmetics, especially since those weapons are free. They're kind of just thrown in there in the early part. and it gets very predictable. We already know that we're going to get a couple weapons each season, even though season 1 has 7 weapons. Not all melee weapons or anything like that. There's a good variety of weapons in the 7 weapons they're dropping in season 1, but that's kind of irrelevant. The COD fatigue has already happened, so I've gotten a lot of comments where people don't actually even care what's in Black Ops 7. They don't care that the campaign sucked. They don't care that multiplayer is good. They don't care that zombies. That's like all irrelevant. Like the game existing, regardless of what the content was, is irrelevant. The fatigue is already set in, and it's unfortunate for the developers that I think put out for the most part, a decent product. If like Black Ops 7 was taken in a vacuum, it'd probably be fine, but it's not in a vacuum. It literally comes after BO6, right after Modern Warfare 3, which was immediately after MW2, which in my opinion is one of the worst CODs ever put out. Even though the sales were good, the actual retention dove off a cliff, and there's many metrics that show this. Along with the seasonal content, I think some of the crossovers were a little outlandish. People got a little bit burnt out on that, even though I think in the next Battle Pass or the season 1 content, it looks like they've kept it mostly tame, but that doesn't really matter. I think they were a little bit too data driven on the meta side, especially with Warzone. I know multiplayer, they made some changes here and there when it comes to metas, but in general, the metas were pretty stale over the past couple years, and I think that leads to a lot of problems in the variety of the weapons. I think they've already been a little bit more aggressive on the initial part of it, and I think once Warzone gets those little knobs and handles to be able to choose some things and change stuff independent from the multiplayer, that'll probably be good for Warzone, but that's irrelevant. They waited too long. It doesn't matter that they're getting it right. One example I saw on Twitter, which was great, they were like, oh, so if like your girlfriend cheats on you 10 times, but then she's finally going to be an honest woman and not cheat on you anymore, like, is that just sets everything straight? No, not in my opinion. Same thing with COD. They basically abuse their player base for years, months, every season after season after season, content drop after content drop. And then they expect you to just turn around and act like nothing happened. And I've seen it the whole time. And I've actually seen the various cycles because we went through the Warzone spike and dip because people got fatigued with Warzone and some of these issues overlapping. But this is like the COD franchise as a whole. That's all whatever, right? The meta needs to change more often, and that leads to fatigue. But then there's the other side where things just generally take too long to level each year, especially with Warzone. It's like, oh, I got to get the new game just to level my weapons so that I can be competitive on the day that the game comes out. I don't really even like multiplayer, so I'm going to burn myself out playing multiplayer or zombies that I don't like, or campaign that I don't like, especially now for some people. And then I'm only doing that so I can play Rebirth Island for the 6th year in a row. Those are all like issues. One of the more prominent things that I think they really missed the mark on was the loss of identity. I brought this up several years ago when how they were actually putting together their gameplay loop. It no longer mirrored what we kind of grew up with as Call of Duty. I've been playing Call of Duty since Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare, all the way through the Golden Era, through the Jetpack Era, through the Supply Drop Era was second half of that, into the next gen, which is this current generation, and they basically all use the shared engine, which is great for them. They can go ahead and pick and pull things, and it carries over, and all the shared stuff, it's super useful. But the real problem with that is that shared identity of the game is too similar to the uninformed or inexperienced eye. They really can't tell the difference. They think that MW 2019 looks like MW2 and looks like MW3. Somehow Cold War looks like Black Ops 6 and Black Ops 7 at the same time, even though Cold War is in its own engine. But you kind of get the point I'm going with there is it felt too samey. Even though if we go back to MW2 and MW3, the OG version, they were split in the middle with another game in the middle. So it didn't feel so samey. It took that year in between. So even though those games, it's very hard, even for the knowledgeable eye, to tell the difference between the OG MW2 and MW3 at a glance without actually looking at it. Okay, cool. Because they used so much that was the same, and it got that feedback back then. But those games didn't come back sequentially, like literally back to back, the same way they did with the MW2, MW3, BO6 to BO7. creates a lot of issues. There should have been a game in between, and that removes some of that fatigue. They literally did whoever made that decision 5 years ago when they started developing, 7 years ago when they started developing MW2, or whenever that game was in development, they really screwed that up by going, let's go MW2 into MW3. Like, stupid. And then, even though Treyarch managed to make it work for BO7, stupid to go from BO6 to BO7, in my opinion. And I think the fatigue is just more compounded because of those types of things. I will say that that's all on the developer side. I think there are some things that the community does as a whole. It's a pretty large community. There's a lot of people that just have completely unrealistic expectations of what COD should be or they want it to be. And I know this from talking to a lot of people, seeing a lot of comments, checking out Twitter, seeing Reddit. And the reality is a lot of people that like, they could get their perfect COD and they still wouldn't like it. Because even when you go back to BO2, MW3, the OG1, or MW2, those weren't perfect CODs. People enjoyed them. There's a lot of nostalgia around them. They were amazing for their time. It was so like awesome to experience those in their prime. We can never really have that gaming experience again. And the community sets this false expectations of things that would make it a golden era COD. But even if they just took BO2, remastered it, verbatim, like perfect one-to-one copy with great graphics, pick 10, all the streaks, all the maps identical, it would not work in today's day and age. People just would not enjoy the game. They would think it's trash in today's day and age. Even though the campaign is much better than we have today. I think there's been a steady decline on campaigns over the years too. It feels like no one really plays our campaign, even though there's people in the comments who say, oh, I only play the campaign. I don't know. I don't get that. I've always only played the multiplayer, and then probably in the past 8 to 10 years, I've gotten more into zombies combined with that. And then obviously with 2020, Warzone came out. So those are the 3 modes. Campaign's been like, oh, cool. At least this year we got a camo, and they're going to do some cool events for it later on, but doesn't really make the mode all that more valuable. I think there's other things where, because Call of Duty's been around so long, there's like way too many modes. There's a lot of fan favorites. Like even in the season 1 blog, they talk about doing sticks and stones, gun game, and all these things are cool, but they don't really work. I think a lot of times there are fun party modes, but one of the things that separated Black Ops 1 with a lot of those introductions of party modes, which is the in-game currency of the wager system, added a ton of replay of value, and you can do those different types of modes, and there was something you were competing for. Just like with these little events that they're doing where you play it, if they isolated it to a specific mode and you could actually 1v1 people in tournaments or something like that, and then you would get rewards as there's different ways that they can do it. I don't think the system that we have now is better than that wager system, but that was before there was COD points and all these other things. You just had the in-game currency that was used to unlock camos and upgrade attachments, and it was a completely different system. I also think that the expectation of the meta changes has shifted significantly. Like I was talking about, they don't update it enough. If we go ahead and look back at the old days in the prime, basically they would do like 3 updates a year. Something like insane like that. Maybe 4 at the most. Unless something was completely broken, it would just stay that way. And it would just be broken. And there's patches that would have gone through to fix some of those things. It's just that update tempo didn't exist. They would just pump out their DLC every 3 months. And that was a content drop and it felt okay, whatever. But the seasonal model, it just feels like you're on that hamster wheel. And a lot of games go through that fatigue, but when you've been doing it for 20 years, like Call of Duty has, it's significantly worse. And one thing I have talked about quite a bit is their store. And if you guys have been following the channel for a while, you know that I basically buy nothing in the store, even though I have a decent amount of COD points to buy stuff. I basically just get the battle pass, grind that out, and that's it. I don't really invest in all these microtransactions because I feel like they're overpriced. And this is one thing that drastically shifted with Fortnite, and games like COD copied, but it's just absurd to charge a $70 game and then act like your game's free to play and charge for the microtransactions. The microtransactions should be easily half the price, or even more of a discount than they currently are if they're going to charge $70 for the game. And I think realistically they could charge $50 for the game and it would be in a much better state knowing that's going to come out each year. Even if it was a DLC, DLCs cost that a lot of times. They're either $29.99 or $49.99, and this gives you the expansion or whatever the case is, like all these other games do. COD should have leaned into that, cut their microtransactions, and then the perception of the greed would be much lower. But of course, they don't, because it's Activision, owned by Xbox now. Everyone's like, oh, they're going to be the saving grace. Xbox is going to come in, clean house, and fix it all. All they did is just fire a bunch of people, and nothing changed. Like, it is what it is. And they even went with this system where there was some carryover, but then because of the timelines, there's so much stuff that doesn't even make sense that it would take place in MW3 and carry over with the Warzone cosmetics and all that stuff, created another issue. But then that's anti-consumer, because if somebody buys something, they can't carry it over to the next game. And like, there's other systems that, like, they tried to copy Fortnite, but then they didn't like think it through. And then they gave us some cosmetics and they pulled some back, and then they're undecided on what they want to do, and that just doesn't work. And probably one of the last things that I'll go ahead and talk about is the anti-cheat. Before the integration of MW 2019, there was no crossplay. Basically, you played on console with your own individual console, so PlayStation only, Xbox only, and then Steam or Battle.net was it only. I don't know. I didn't play on PC then. And basically, that's all it was. There was tons of cheaters on PC still. And the worst you'd get in a console lobby is maybe someone using a jitter mod for their trigger. And, you know, people selling snake oil for aim assist and whatever other nonsense. But regardless of that, that's kind of how it was. And for essentially 15 years, we had no cheating issues in console. It was great. You never had to question the kill cam. You never had to question if the person you were fighting against was legitimate or not, if they were using some kind of weird walls. And then 2019 eroded all that. The crossplay, we got a crash course in people are scumbags, and they're going to use every cheat in the book to try and make stuff happen. And the anti-cheat was horrendous garbage, never worked. And when Warzone came out, it was free to play. It had its issues too, and right out the gate, caused a lot of issues, and that turned a lot of people off of the game. And I know that that's one of those things that feels like it's much better this year in terms of like the amount of times you'll actually run into a cheater seems significantly lower. We'll find out more with the season 1 update if it actually benefited Warzone, because I do see people posting like screenshots or tweets of people saying, hey, look at this guy live streaming his cheats or whatever the case is. But I haven't actually ran into one. And from the streams I've had up from grinding my camos at the same time, I haven't really seen them run into them. So it could be better, but that doesn't matter. I've talked about this when I did a video several months ago that the discourse was gone. I talked about it. I said there is no discourse. People have made up their mind. They've already made the decision. And that's kind of led into, like, that was the precursor to Call of Duty Fatigue. And that's kind of where we're at now. And for me, personally, it sucks on the YouTube side because every comment like, hey, you know, the game sucks, you know, oh, blah, blah, just negative, right? And then there's some, you know, real ones in there in the comments. I'm sure you guys will comment here too. But there's like real ones that comment, be like, hey, JGOD, still love your videos, you know, whatever the case is, you know, they're chill, vibe, you know, supportive. And I appreciate that because it is a toxic, negative place in the comment section. And this is why I like creators like Exclusive Ace went and started his own independent channel separate from it to try and, like, you know, cull some of those people off. And even in my case, obviously my biggest pop off was Warzone, but I had over 100,000 subscribers before Warzone was ever a thing. And one of the things that is interesting is every video I post is significantly hurt because it'll say subscribers aren't watching. Well, of course not. They're not interested in Black Ops 7. They either have COD Fatigue, they're Warzone only. They're waiting for that season 1 Warzone meta that's not going to come. Unfortunately, I'm sorry to break it to you. Like I said in my video about Warzone, I don't plan to cover that probably until Blackout 2. And even then, I probably won't cover it. And we'll kind of just see where it goes. If the views are bad on YouTube, it's okay. I enjoy it. That's the main thing. I've said before, I'll say it again. I enjoy making content, and that's kind of where we're at. I'm having a lot of fun with the current game, despite the COD fatigue. It'll be really interesting to see what happens with MW4 next year, since it seems like because of that 2-year break, people are going to be eating that crap up. It will be on a newer engine because it won't include PS4s anymore. And then the other real crazy part is that GTA also comes out, which is going to be a juggernaut there. So we'll kind of see what happens. I just kind of want to event a little bit. I see the COD fatigue. I feel a little bit of the COD fatigue, but here we are. See you on the next one. Thank you for watching. As always, have a great day.